How much did they pay you to lie? That was the first message that I received as a fact-checking intern 2 years ago. Now, when I first read it, I laughed. I mean, accusations that I, a 20-year-old intern, was being paid to spread lies to the public, it was comical. But the next day, I got a comment. This is what they do. They use your own people to cover up and talk down on you. And then I got another comment, and then more comments, and suddenly, I wasn't laughing anymore. When the act of truth-telling becomes more controversial than the lie itself, we've crossed a line in the behavior that we tolerate in this society. It reminds me of one of humanity's oldest cautionary tales, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. You know the story. Day after day, a little boy tricks his village into thinking that a wolf is attacking him and his flock of sheep. But one day, when the wolf finally does arrive, the villagers don't believe his cries for help, and the flock is destroyed. Now, the lesson we often take from this story is that no one will believe a liar, even when he or she finally tells the truth. But if you look closer, there's something even more disturbing going on. This is a village that has become exceptionally numb to dishonesty. I mean, when the boy first lies, the reaction is harsh. He is heavily reprimanded, and the villagers complain the entire way home. But by the third or fourth lie, not a single person reacts. With every lie the boy tells, the villagers' reactions weaken, and their outrage completely fades away. It's this indifference that ultimately leaves the village vulnerable, completely unguarded when the threat finally arrives. This is the harder lesson for us to learn, that turning a blind eye to dishonesty harms us just as much as the liar. It's at this point that I'm no longer talking about a child's fable. I'm talking about the current state of our society. Around the world, we are increasingly excusing blatant dishonesty, specifically in the form of disinformation and fake news. From climate change to health information to politics, lying has become so commonplace that we barely even react anymore. My work has shown me not only how easily disinformation spreads, but also how numb we have become to it. Now, a leading ethical concern is that people believe disinformation, but a graver ethical concern is that people condone it. But let me make one thing very clear. There is nothing normal about disinformation. Deliberately lying for personal or political gain, not normal. Spreading these lies to mislead other people, not normal. And accepting that this behavior is a part of our public discourse, not normal. I mean, without even realizing it, we have become the villagers. In the US, disinformation about the COVID-19 pandemic led to hundreds of thousands of preventable hospitalizations and deaths. In South Africa, it directly contributed to over 330,000 deaths during the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And in Brazil, it fueled distrust in election results, prompting attacks on government buildings in 2022. And globally, the impacts of fake news cost the economy an estimated $78 billion a year. So why, in the face of such consequences, have we become so indifferent to this behavior? Disinformation is eroding the ethical standards that we hold for ourselves and others, and I'm here to sound the alarm. As a journalist and psychological researcher, I've dedicated my undergraduate career to examining this issue. How did we get here? Why is this a problem? And most importantly, what are we going to do about it? So let's back up and begin by first defining both mis- and disinformation. While the terms sound really similar, there is a critical distinction, and that is intent. Misinformation is a mistake. It's false or inaccurate information without the intent to harm. Picture a well-meaning health influencer who posts incorrect advice online, or your grandmother who sends you AI-generated content, but she thought that it was real. These are mistakes, but they're not lies. Disinformation, on the other hand, is deceptive. The person responsible knows the information is false, and that's exactly why they want to share it. These are incorrect posts online about the outcome of the election, or politicians who fund misleading ads about their opponents. Today, we'll be focusing on disinformation because the problem lies not in error, but in dishonesty. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a fact checker and I've worked my fair share of political events, and some of the behavior I've seen has been deeply concerning. One occasion in particular has never left my mind. This was an internationally televised event, and within minutes of its start, false claims started flooding in. I mean, first one, and then three, and then dozens. Fingers raced across keyboards trying to verify every claim, but they were coming so fast. And I remember looking up at my colleagues, at their faces, and I saw this mix of disbelief and defeat. The accuracy of information that impacted millions of people was being treated like an option. What was going on? But what truly terrified me was the public's response, because the next day, this behavior was not even a thought in people's minds. I mean, this was an event where truth mattered most, and no one even batted an eye. I wanted to reach through the phone screen and shake each user one by one. Was nobody seeing this? It felt like trying to warn a town about a fire while they stood warming their hands by the flames. And this was when my disbelief turned into panic, because I realized we'd crossed a line. People were now comfortable with being lied to. Since that day, I've worked to answer a very important question. Why have we become so okay with lying? To do that, I had to step into one of my favorite realms, psychology and ethics, and here's what I found. When we first encounter a falsehood, many of us feel a strong negative emotional reaction: outrage, anger, frustration, disappointment, and these emotions then influence how we judge the situation. But when the same person lies to us, or we hear the same lie again, something shifts. Our initial flash of moral judgment fades, and our reactions weaken. Just like how our brains adapt to other unpleasant stimuli in our environment, over time, this repeated exposure causes the intensity of our response to diminish. Unfortunately, in the case of dishonesty, this means that we're also less likely to judge the behavior. Let's think about this in the context of your own experience with online deception. How did you feel the first time that you heard a lie about the COVID-19 pandemic? How do you feel when you hear one today? What about the first time you saw a deepfake video online? What was your reaction? But how would you react if I put one on the screen right now? This mental numbing that you experience as you feel falsehood after falsehood isn't just in your head. It's a documented psychological phenomenon. It's a cycle I like to call deception fatigue. The mental numbing that we experience when we are repeatedly exposed to dishonesty. It's like going to the gym every 5 minutes and working the same muscle. Eventually, it becomes too fatigued to work anymore. The algorithmic design of many social media platforms contributes to this exposure. Every day, we are exposed to 2.5 quintillion bytes of new data. That's the equivalent of 5 trillion books. So as the amount of information in our environment increases, so does the amount of disinformation. We are thus overwhelmed with false news every day, accelerating our path from outrage to apathy. Now, in our own lives, this weakens our ability to judge dishonesty. But at the societal level, it does something even more dangerous. It shifts the norm. Dishonesty becomes tolerated, even expected, and that is where the real damage begins. So I'd like to take a minute and talk about social norms and their ability to drastically influence human behavior. Social norms are the informal rules that govern one's actions in a group setting. Humans are social creatures, so there's always been an evolutionary benefit to behaving in line with the group. If I believe that something is socially acceptable, I'm much more likely to take that action. Take smoking, for example. It wasn't long ago that smoking in the United States was considered glamorous. It was permitted nearly everywhere, in hospitals, at schools, on airplanes. At its peak in 1964, 42% of American adults smoked cigarettes every day. But through education campaigns and social pressure, the norm slowly started to shift. And today, smoking in many places isn't just rare, it's frowned upon. Social norms directly contributed to the prevalence of that behavior, and they will directly contribute to the amount of disinformation in our society. But here's the thing, we don't have decades to wait for this norm to shift. Because every day that we treat disinformation as normal, we are standing in that village, watching the boy cry wolf, and choosing not to do anything about it. If a society does not react negatively to a behavior, its prevalence is going to increase. From the perspective of the liar, the pressure to tell the truth has faded because there is no repercussion. From the perspective of those being lied to, if no one else reacts to a lie, why should we? And together, this creates a dangerous feedback loop. So what are we going to do about it? I believe the answer lies in combating disinformation proactively, not reactively. Fact-checking is such important work, but it is not going to be enough to address the threat of disinformation. We need a solution that targets the problem at the root. My work has shown me how difficult it is to reverse false beliefs after they're already solidified, and so it's pushed me to find a solution that reduces fake news before it's spread, not after. So I'd like to introduce you to weird checking. Weird checking is similar to fact checking, but instead of asking, is this statement true, you ask, is this behavior normal? Calling harmful behaviors like spreading fake news weird communicates powerful cues about social norms. Weird checking says that you, the people, actually reject this behavior, reducing its acceptability. Now, this phenomenon of checking our ideas against others is deeply ingrained in us. It's called social proof. If I see other people endorsing a message, I'm also more likely to endorse it. However, our sense of what's normal is constructed based on the responses or lack thereof about our behavior. So while it sounds counterintuitive, we are largely responsible for the incessant fake news in our society. Spreading lies would significantly decrease if people cared enough to resist the behavior. So what does this look like in practice? Well, the next time you see someone spreading fake news, call them out. You've left your opinion on the internet over far less important things. Whether it's online or in person, saying out loud that you don't agree with this action is powerful. And even though it's just you, your willingness to speak up will directly influence someone else's decision to do the same. Calling out these actions forces the offender to consider if their actions are actually in line with social norms. And it works. Studies show that when people are reminded of social expectations, they are less likely to share disinformation, and their audience is less likely to reshare it. Why? Because for many, the desire for social acceptance outweighs the desire for factual correctness. Now, humans are cognitive misers. That means that if we aren't attached to an issue personally, we'd prefer to solve it with as little effort as possible. So if you're wondering, why should I care? I'd like to remind you that if you aren't actively resisting disinformation, you are passively accepting its impacts. Not only are you normalizing dishonesty in the public space, but you're also normalizing it in your own life. Your indifference is harming your ability to be ethical and condemn dishonesty at all. How willing would you be to turn a blind eye when a politician you like says something that's factually incorrect? We must resist the urge to be passive in order to preserve our own moral compass. It should leave a sour taste in our mouth whenever we encounter fake news, no matter who said it or how many times we've heard it before. No one benefits from you staying silent about this behavior, especially you. Remember those harmful messages that I received as a fact checker? Well, still waiting on my check. But what I did receive was something far more valuable. The realization that targeting fake news is not just about fact-checking. It's about courage. The courage to stand up and say, I don't agree with this behavior, and I am no longer going to pretend like I do. I'm a journalist and I've seen the worst of it, and I am not giving up. Neither should you. So the next time that you encounter fake news, please remember, do not become the villagers, indifferent to dishonesty until it is too late. Because unlike the wolf in the story, the threat of disinformation is very real. People have died, countries have been fractured, and democracy has suffered. But if you won't do it for the future of our society, Please do it for yourself. Thank you.